Thank you for coming today. I'm Attorney Gloria Allred, and with me is Lizzette Martinez, and I will be making a statement, and then Ms. Martinez will be making a statement, and then we will take some questions. Today I'm here with another brave accuser of Robert Sylvester Kelly, aka R. Kelly. Lizzette Martinez explained her allegations against R. Kelly when she was featured on Lifetime's documentary, Surviving R. Kelly. She alleged that she met Mr. Kelly at a mall when she was only 17 years old, and that she was victimized by him when she was under the age of 18, and after that as well. The impact on Lizzette of her victimization by Mr. Kelly has been severe physically and emotionally, and the trauma of his victimization of her continues to this day. Despite that, Lizzette has been courageous and decided to speak out today. This will be her first public statement since R. Kelly, now defendant Kelly in the criminal case in Chicago, has been arrested and charged with 10 counts of aggravated sexual abuse against 3 alleged victims who were underage and 1 adult. Lizzette and I are speaking out today because we are both disturbed by statements made by the defense about alleged victims. Steve Greenberg, who is one of the lawyers representing this defendant, has stated that all of the victims are lying. All of the victims are expected to testify under oath at the trial, and many, if not all, most likely testified under oath before the grand jury. Other accusers that I represent have met with and provided the facts underlying their allegations to law enforcement in a number of different jurisdictions. Defendant Kelly has not testified under oath about these allegations, and I suspect that he will decline to do so at trial. I think that those facts speak for themselves. In addition, many of the accusers of defendant Kelly have suffered extreme backlash from Kelly's fans. This has been very upsetting to them, but they have persisted and refused to remain silent. They will not cave in to intimidation, threats, or personal attacks by those who seem to be influenced by the cult of celebrity. I commend my clients and many other accusers for their courage. Another defense tactic was revealed by defense attorney Brian Nix, who is quoted by Rolling Stone as having stated that his client, R. Kelly, quote, believes that the scripted documentary by Lifetime has created collusion between and amongst female friends who have been converted to victims, end quote. My message to R. Kelly is clear. Nobody that I represent has been converted to being a victim by her female friends. The only person who has converted Lizzette to becoming a victim is R. Kelly. Also, it appears that harming children is a long-standing practice of Mr. Kelly. He reportedly owes $169,000 to his own children in unpaid, court-ordered child support. Not only has his failure to pay hurt his own children, but now he's charged with numerous counts of aggravated sexual abuse of other children who were teenagers as well. Finally, I'm very concerned that law enforcement has reportedly been provided with a second video allegedly showing Mr. Kelly engaging in sexual abuse with a different minor than reportedly appeared on the first tape. I also represent victims who have not gone public, and they are very concerned that they were recorded being sexually abused, and some of them as minors, and they pray that this tape and others will not be provided to the press, as the first one was, and will only be given to law enforcement. Finally, as I have said previously, other jurisdictions are also investigating Mr. Kelly. I have been in contact with at least 4 other law enforcement agencies, and many of my clients have spoken to law enforcement as well. We will continue to be alert to any violations of our clients' rights and any threats that are made against them. This time, I have every reason to believe that there will be justice for Mr. Kelly and a number of his victims. And now I present Lizzette. Martinez.
My name is Lizzette Martinez, and my story was told to the world on Lifetime's documentary, Surviving R. Kelly. At the age of 17, I was walking in the mall with friends like so many teenagers often do when I was approached by a predator, and that predator is Robert Sylvester Kelly. The years of him preying on young women have gone on for far too long. Robert Sylvester Kelly must be held accountable for the many lives he has ruined. I stand with the victims, including those who are out there who have not come forward yet. I say to you, you are not alone. And to Mr. Greenberg, it is so irresponsible to state all the women are liars. The only person lying is your client, which he has done for more than 20 years. But it's looking like his time is up. Hopefully, this new indictment will lead to justice and Kelly's many victims can begin to heal. Thank you.
We'll be happy to take some questions.
This is the first time that you have spoken publicly about this, have you said?
About the indictment
About the indictment.
and the subsequent statements that have been made by members of his defense team.
Can you talk about any of the other four? Are they all local, or do you want?
The other law enforcement?
Well, I assume that regards four other victims?
Oh, you're talking about 4 other victims.
Is that
Oh, I
correct?
represent more than 4
All involved in
victims.
Kelly?
of Mr. or alleged victims of Mr. Kelly, yes.
Can you tell us
I did a press conference, for example, last week in New York on Thursday with two of my clients who are accusers of Mr. Kelly, Latrice and Rochelle. And prior to that, a few months ago, I did another press conference in New York with my client Faith Rogers, and she's also on the Lifetime documentary, and also with her mom, Kelly Rogers, also with Michelle Kramer, who is the mother of another one of my clients, who has not spoken publicly, but who was rescued by her mom from Mr. Kelly. And so we have continued to speak out. Now, I have not identified all of the other accusers that I represent, but there are, so 3, 5, 6, I've identified, I guess, 6 so far. And,
How many other accusers are there?
pardon me?
How many other accusers?
You mean that I represent?
Yes.
I'm not going to say.
Can you tell us anything about the other 4 jurisdictions, the law enforcement agencies involved?
I will only say those that I have identified previously, and that is the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, also New York Police Department, so I'm not identifying the other 2 at this time, unless I think it is timely to do so.
Probably an open question to both of you. Why do you think it took so long for Mr. Kelly to finally be arrested?
That's a very good question. Why did it take so long for Mr. Kelly finally to be arrested? In the first trial, it ended in an acquittal in Chicago. That's the case in which he was tried on allegations that there was a videotape, that he was on that videotape, that the videotape shows him having sex or being sexually abusing, I should say, a minor, young minor, I think 14 years old or less. She declined to testify at that time. Mr. Kelly's defense was that he was not the person on it, and there was an acquittal. Some people speculate that the reason he was not arrested sooner is that some people do not value sexual abuse of African American women, who are most of the alleged victims, but we don't know all of the alleged victims because not all have come forward to anyone, is our belief. And so some people feel that way. Another number of African American women have felt that way and have expressed that to me, that their lives were not valued the way the lives of others might be valued, others of other races. I don't know, that's speculation, but I know it's a legitimate concern they have. Having said that, the good news is that the prosecutor, Kim Fox, in Cook County in Chicago, has gone to a grand jury, and they have returned indictments where there are charges in reference to 4 alleged victims.
Can Ms. Martinez weigh in on the same question and the same feelings that she has about that?
Why it
Yeah,
had?
why so long and her feelings?
Yeah,
I mean,
of
she
course,
obviously
we're
knew
speculating, but do you wish to
obviously knew
answer that or
something
not?
happened to her,
Why do you
she
think
must
it's
have
taken
been
so long? Okay, she doesn't have it, she indicates she doesn't have any comment on that.
Any
but,
other comments about anything that she wants to say?
Well, I will say this, she will be speaking to law enforcement, as many of my other clients have.
And, I mean, a big part of the reason that we're here is because his defending attorney said that all of the accusers are liars.
And-
How did that, I mean, make you feel as an attorney, and Lizzette, if you want to speak to how that made you feel personally?
I mean, it's irresponsible, it's ludicrous. I mean, the only person that's lying, like I said before, is Robert Sylvester Kelly, and he's been doing that for a very long time. What would be our motive to lie? I came out for the purpose of telling my story because this has gone on for far too long. And it's been like 20 years, since this happened to me, but it was so important for me to come out because he has to be stopped. This isn't new. This has been going on for a long time.
And what's new is the prosecution.
Right.
Right, thank you. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, right now, Lizette's accusations are not among these 10 counts.
That's correct.
What is your game plan going forward? Are you hoping that her charges will be included at some point, or are you going after him civilly? What's happening?
We have not filed any civil lawsuit against Mr. Kelly at this time. I can't predict what's going to happen in the future. As to this case in Chicago, it will be interesting to see if, as in the case of Bill Cosby, in which I was representing 33 accusers of Bill Cosby in that criminal case, whether other accusers will be permitted to testify as to what in Pennsylvania were called prior bad acts, or not. We'll have to see what the Illinois courts allow in that regard. In reference to Mr. Cosby, there were 2 criminal trials. In the first, one other accuser other than the alleged victim was permitted to testify. I represented her. That case ended in a mistrial. In other words, the jury couldn't decide, they were deadlocked. The case was refiled. In the second criminal case against Mr. Cosby, 5 prior bad act witnesses, other accusers, were permitted to testify. I represented the majority of them. And it resulted in a conviction of aggravated indecent assault against Andrea Constant, the alleged victim. And of course, Mr. Cosby is in prison and has been classified as a sexually violent predator. A similar issue I expect to arise in the case involving Harvey Weinstein, now pending in New York City. There are 2 alleged victims there. I represent one of those 2 alleged victims in that criminal case. And will other accusers be permitted to testify in that criminal case is also an issue, and it will not be a surprise to me if that issue is decided very soon. I'm not going to comment on whether I do represent any other accusers in that criminal case. So now we're back to R. Kelly, but I expect that that will be a similar issue. So we will see who, if anyone, seeks to have the testimony of Ms. Martinez or any other person that I represent. And we will also see, it is yet to be determined, whether charges will be filed in any of these other jurisdictions or any other jurisdictions which have not yet contacted me.
And again, you said you represent 4 total accusers of R. Kelly.
Now, I represent a number of our accusers of R.
Okay.
Kelly. As I said, so far, I have been public with their permission about 6 that I represent. But I represent more than 6 because some of my clients who allege they are victims of R. Kelly have chosen not to go public and not to have me disclose their name, and of course, I will always protect the privacy of my clients, if
So
that is their
I didn't
wish.
see the documentary. When did this happen to, Ms.
Between
Martinez?
which years and which years? Good question, and the answer is between
1995 and 1999.
1995 to 1999, there was I'll call it an abusive relationship, is what is being alleged, between Ms. Martinez and Mr. Kelly.
It started when she was 17?
That's correct.
And it happened in what city?
Well, we're not going to go into the cities and states, but I will say it's more than one state.
Was it a case where you couldn't just break away from him? He held you like a slave or what?
Okay, well, we're not going to characterize the situation, but some of the facts or some of her allegations are on the Lifetime documentary, and she will be answering all of the questions of law enforcement, including all of the facts. So, and she will explain why that abusive relationship, which is the way she would term it, lasted for so many years.
Does the statute run out on that, or can you?
I thank you for your question, but we're not going to opine on the statute of limitations on that.
Has any law enforcement actually asked for her to speak with them?
Yes.
So what?
Has she done that yet?
She will be meeting with him very, very soon.
Was she threatened by R. Kelly to stay quiet?
We are not going to be specific about any threats that have been made against her, either the content of those threats or who made those threats. But I think it's fair to say that she does not feel secure, and yet she's willing to come forward today. And given what I know, which I will not disclose, I also have reason to be concerned about her safety.
Will you guys be going after any of R. Kelly's entourage or any other people?
We're here today only to talk about R. Kelly, and we want to keep that as the focus because he is the one who's charged with 10 felonies, and that is our focus. I'm receiving quite a bit of information from people who purport to have information. I welcome that information about Mr. Kelly, about his operation, his associates, any enablers, any assistants, and I'm not going to make any kind of broad brush statement that everyone involved with him was an enabler. You know, we'll have to see what the facts are, and I think it's only fair to wait.
Since we do have the criminal charges in Chicago,
That's correct.
and you talked about the Cosby case with the prior bad act witnesses, would Ms. Martinez be willing to say she would be willing to testify as a prior bad act witness, and why would that be important to her?
Well, I think we have to wait and see if that would even be permitted. But I think but to try to respond to your question, would you be willing to testify if asked to do so in a court of law in an appropriate case involving Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Can she say why that would be important to her?
Well, I mean, I think she's willing to cooperate with law enforcement and to speak her truth in a court of law under oath, where she swears to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God. And of course, I challenge Mr. Kelly to do the same. I doubt that he will.
Will you also be seeking to file charges in Lizzette Martinez's case in addition to her testifying for other cases?
Well, the only individuals who can file charges are the prosecutors in various jurisdictions. So that will be up to them. All a person who is an alleged victim can do is speak to law enforcement and tell their truth, provide any corroborating evidence that they may have, and then it's up to the prosecutor to decide if any charges should be filed, and if so, what those charges would be.
But you're seeking to make a case for Ms.
I would say we're not seeking to make a case, but we are seeking to make sure that law enforcement has all relevant information, has an opportunity to interview any potential witness, and then they'll make the decision. That's not a decision for us to make, but of course they'll be interested in whether any individual to whom they speak would be willing to testify under oath, because that's important. And so we'll have to wait and see. I think sometimes justice moves slowly, and so I would say that my feeling about the jurisdictions to which I've spoken is that there's still active investigations going on. And so if, as and when they complete their investigations, if, as and when they file charges, then that would be for them to announce.
Ms. Allred, what makes you confident that Mr. Kelly will be found guilty this time around, as opposed to last?
Well, of course, I haven't said that he will be found guilty. I never predict what a jury will do, because after 43 years of practicing law, I can assure you that I do not have a crystal ball. I don't know what any jury will ever do, and I frankly don't think it's respectful to juries to forecast or try to predict what a jury will do. I also, as an officer of the court, do not criticize jury verdicts, even jury verdicts with which I do not agree. I don't make allegations about jurors. I think they need to be respected.
Do you feel the evidence, though, this time around is much more daunting?
Well, this time, there are certainly more felony charges filed against Mr. Kelly. There are 3, not just one, alleged victims who were minors and who appear to be willing to testify. And then there's 1 adult. And so the testimony of a witness / victim witness, it certainly has value. That's evidence. It may be that law enforcement, meaning the prosecutor, has much more documentary evidence, including videotapes, any other documentary evidence that they may have than they had the first time. So I think this is a very different case than it was the first time.
Ms. Martinez, how do you feel about the fact that Mr. Kelly is behind bars?
Would you like to respond to that? Mr. Kelly being in custody, at least as of today, apparently not able to post bail. $1 million bail, he has to post 10%, $100,000.
Oh, I'll say he's where he belongs.
How old are you now, Lizzette?
41.
Any other questions?
I don't want to speak specifically to the statute of limitations involving Ms. Martinez case. We were discussing earlier, different jurisdictions have different statute of limitations?
Yes, great question.
Yeah, if you could clarify a little bit on that legal question, because I know people have been trying to
Yeah.
figure out how
Yeah.
all of these pieces work together.
Me too. Having said that, there are a statute of limitations is an arbitrary time period set by law. It is different in every state. It is different for criminal cases versus civil cases. It is often different if the alleged victim is a minor underage than if the alleged victim is an adult who alleges adult sexual abuse. Usually there's a longer time period, statute of limitations for adult victims of child sexual abuse or child victims of child sexual abuse. It's different in every state. And the laws are constantly changing. For example, in Illinois, the law changed on statute of limitations, which has most likely been a factor in why this case has been able to be filed now. We have worked to change the law. Number of my clients who were accusers of Bill Cosby and myself changed the law, helped to change the law, I should say, in California, where we eliminated the statute of limitations for criminal prosecution of rape and child sexual abuse. And Governor Brown signed that into law. You see that in my documentary, Seeing Allred on Netflix. I have also testified along with Cosby accusers to change the law in Nevada and also in Colorado, and then we were successful in both of those states in changing the law in terms of extending the statute of limitations. So, statute of limitations just changed in New York. It's different, so we always need to check in reference to that for the states in which the alleged sexual abuse or misconduct occurred, to determine what is the statute of limitations in that state for the facts that are alleged by the accuser, both criminally and civilly.
Would that be retroactive if there was a state that, I think Illinois changed the law or did away with it in 2017? Would that be retroactive, or how?
Well, there is a very significant issue discussed in legal circles and also in briefs in many places in reference to whether any change in the statute of limitations can be retroactive or not. So, for example, we opened in California a one-year window many years ago when I was involved in the pre-sexual abuse cases many years ago, again, where I had represented a victim who alleged she was sexually abused by 7 Catholic priests and had a baby by one of them. Anyway, we were successful in opening up what they call a one-year window, so that anyone who had been previously barred by the statute of limitations from filing a case, or who had filed a case that had been dismissed, could refile, which we did. And ultimately it ended in a settlement. New York has also just changed its statute of limitations just in the last, I think, month or so, or maybe the month previously. Governor Cuomo signed that bill into law, which will take an effect in August, which provides a one-year window, which was similar to California's, for civil cases involving allegations of child sexual abuse. So, that obviously is going to go retroactively. So far, I mean, in California, that was upheld. I can't tell you what's going to happen in other states. Obviously, criminal defense attorneys are always going to challenge retroactivity for laws, and they will allege that that's a denial of due process. But in any event,
Ms. Allred,
it's a fair question.
Ms. Allred, are there other Lizzette Martinez's in that same time period, 95 to 99, who were in the same situation that she was, and are just simply too afraid to come forward?
Well, of course, I don't know what I don't know in terms of who has not yet come forward, who
Yes,
might
you-
come
you-
forward.
yes,
But
you-
all I
you-
can say is, I do have a number of victims that I represent. Some of them have accusations that involve the 90s. I prefer not to be more specific at this time. So apparently, Mr. Kelly was very busy
Does Ms.
during
Martinez-
that time period, not to say he wasn't very busy in other time periods.
Does Ms. Martinez have can you weigh in on that? Do you have any knowledge of that, Ms. Martinez?
Knowledge of what?
Of any other victims like her in that same time period?
No, I'm not sure what you mean by like her.
Well, it's such similar circumstances, 95 to 99, couldn't you get away from?
Where there, without naming anyone, to the best of your knowledge, do you believe that, or do you have reason to believe that there may have been other victims during that time period?
Yes.
How many?
Well, we're not going to go into that, so but thank you for your question.
Ms. Martinez, why was it so important for you to come forward, not only today, but in the documentary, and you've been vocal on other things. I mean, this is something that you've been dealing with for over 20 years, and you can see that you're dealing with it today. But why was it important for you to share your story?
Well, I'm a mother, and I have a daughter. And we have to tell on predators.
Okay.
You can hold, yeah, you can start that thought over again.
Okay, thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Sure. I'm going to say it again because there was interference.
Well, I'm a mom, and I have a daughter, and I felt like I had to be transparent and vocal about what happened to me to save others.
Thank you.
You know, I was hurt as a young girl, and I don't want this to continue to happen or to happen to anyone else.
What would you ultimately like to see happen to Robert Kelly?
Do you want to say or not? I think we all just want justice. He's entitled to his day in court, but so are the alleged victims and perhaps other accusers as well. As I've said, he can no longer run and hide. He's going to have to face the evidence. He's going to have to confront his accusers in a court of law. And then the jury will decide.
Gloria, do you guys have any video evidence? I know Michael Avenatti gave prosecutors a couple videos. Do you guys have any?
I don't have any comment on the evidence that I have. I will say this. If I have any, if I acquire any videotapes, I will not be showing them to the press. I will not be sharing them. They will be provided to law enforcement if I have the permission of the person who has or will provide them.
Sounds like you're upset with Mr. Avenatti.
I have no comment about him. This is about R. Kelly. I'm just saying that if there's any videotape of a minor being sexually abused by anyone, that is not something that I believe should be shared with the press. I don't know whether he did or didn't. This is not about him. I represent, as I say, a number of victims, and they are very concerned because a number of them believe that they either were or may have been recorded. And the idea, I mean, would any mother or father want a videotape, a DVD, any other type of electronic recording of their child being sexually abused by anyone? Would anyone want that turned over to the press? absolutely, I have never met a parent who would want that. I don't believe there's any justification for that. Turn it over to law enforcement, that's fine. But not to any other individual. I don't care whether the press or not. It should not be shared or viewed by anyone. So, no, I've had no communication with him. I have no intention of having any communication with him. I see no reason to do that. He wants to speak to me, and anyone is free to contact me. But my focus is on my clients, not on anyone else. So.
The prosecutor in Chicago, I was surprised, she mentioned that the charges against R. Kelly are probationable. Would that be acceptable to Ms. Martinez, or was she, I mean, you said he's where he belongs now, in jail? Is that?
Well, you know, I think it's a little bit premature to talk about what the sentence may be. All I can say is I think we have to wait and see if, as and when he is convicted or acquitted, or if there's a mistrial in this case, and then we can talk about the sentence if he is convicted. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't think we can take anything for granted at this point. All we can do is keep viewing what the prosecutor says is the evidence, and if there are other alleged victims who decide they're going to come forward either publicly or privately, either to me or to law enforcement or to both, then the evidence will continue to be evaluated.
Can you speak to the societal changes that we've seen over the last couple of years with high-profile individuals, people coming out and speaking about
Yes.
these types of circumstances, even after long periods of time? The change that we're seeing now with more people feeling the courage to come forward.
Well, it may be that the defense in this case also includes attacking the Me Too movement, but all I can say is I've had victims coming forward, speaking publicly, for all these more than 4 decades that I've been practicing law, and I would say that now this is the age of empowerment. This is the reckoning that many accusers are not willing to continue to suffer in silence. They are not willing to let fear be a weapon that keeps them silent. Many of them have now understood that silence often helps the predator and hurts the victim. And so they're willing to tell their truth, either publicly or privately to an attorney, confidentially, which they can do, and or to law enforcement. So, yes, and I would say that predators need to understand that they are now acting at their peril. Don't underestimate your victim, because they are empowered. They may now decide that they are going to speak up and speak out and cause you to have to be accountable. They have been hurt. They are still being hurt as we speak. I'm talking about victims in general. And the person who should pay the price is the predator, not the victim. It's only going to happen if victims decide that they have the courage to do something about it and to find out their benefits and risks of any choice they wish to make. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.